Welcome to Central Georgia Focus. I'm your host this week, Raymond Tubb. And across the country, revitalizing downtown areas, it's a new big thing, but Macon has been at it for nearly a quarter of a century now. As a matter of fact, leaders from other cities visit Macon and see it as a blueprint of how to get revitalization right. The driving force in turning around Macon's dying downtown of the 90s is NewTown Macon, but they are much more than just worrying about storefronts. They've helped make downtown livable and fun. One of their first big projects was the Multi Heritage Trail. Now there's Amerson River Park, a dog park right on the river downtown, and a movement toward a huge river trail system that connects downtown to even more green spaces and recreation opportunities. And joining us today is Josh Rogers, the CEO and President of NewTown Macon Incorporated. And thank you so much for joining us. Always glad to have you here and so much to talk about. And,
thanks for having me.
I guess before we get into what you've been able to accomplish, it's good to turn back the clock and see where Macon has been, because you turn back the clock 150 years ago and Macon was a vital economic a travel hub. People would come from all over South Georgia to eventually to catch trains. On up into the 1950s and 60s, catch trains to go all over the country. That was the main way people got around. The airports weren't as big then, and then commerce with the cotton trade, and it was a major, pretty much a world port, because it was where a lot of the cotton that was grown in Central and South Georgia got down to the coast, so it could go all over the world. So Macon, and the ironworks, I didn't even get into all of that. So Macon's had quite the, you go back and it was a leading economic force in the Southeast at one point.
In the 1830s, Maconites owned the longest rail line in the world, which is crazy to think about. But I mean, I guess that's what sort of caught my attention and pulled my heartstrings when I first found downtown Macon. Is this wasn't a city built by people who lacked resources or imagination or ambition. I mean, they were building beautiful pieces of architecture that were meant to be here for hundreds of years. It was people making a serious investment in downtown Macon. Not every downtown looks like ours does. It's a little treasure box of these beautiful buildings, but you're right, by the middle 1990s, the buildings were still beautiful, but they were almost completely abandoned. All the upper floors had been left empty. The storefront occupancy rate had dropped to 30%.
Wow.
So 70% of our storefronts had no tenant at all. I mean, it was really a ghost town, a desperate situation. And the other thing was there was no obvious path to getting it back. But it just seemed to me like, what a treasure we were sitting on in this downtown that I think other cities would just salivate over, and we had to find out how to make that work for us.
Yeah, what led to that decline?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of factors, mostly the suburbanization of America. It's something that took place everywhere, is that we were building huge, fast roads for the first time that made it possible to travel far cheaply. The personal automobile enabled people to live further away, and there were a lot of good things about that too. I mean, it enabled the American dream for a generation of people that probably wouldn't have been able to access home ownership otherwise. Yeah. But as people moved, so did the opportunities to shop. People still spend almost all their money right by where they live. Right. So we developed shopping malls, and
one of the largest in the state was right here.
Yeah, that's right. And that just emptied out downtown. Those were the downtown tenants, and I think it took us a generation to figure out how to reuse those spaces without department stores.
Yeah, and so you were talking about it's so hard to find the key or the pathway back, but Macon, another part of its historic past with its newspaper history and all the money that came with that. Led to the Peyton Anderson Foundation, which led to NewTown being created.
That's exactly right, yeah. So Peyton Anderson owned the newspaper, and when he died in 1988, he left almost $40 million to benefit Macon. But he gave Juanita Jordan almost carte blanche. He said, you know me better than anybody else, you'll figure out what to do with it. Wow. And she said she was standing in the Fickling building overlooking downtown right after his death in his office, and she said downtown was dead. And she decided that's what she wanted to change. There's so many of these great stories that are about leaders finding the right moment and making a decision. And Ms. Jordan was simply unstoppable. Yes. So her first partnership was with Mercer University. She brought in President Kirby Godsey to chair the board, and that's a tradition we've continued since then. Bill Underwood's been chair since he's been president. So that partnership between Peyton Anderson and Mercer really caught everybody's attention, because those were two heavyweight leaders. And when they said we needed to get something done, it made it a lot easier for us to form a board. The other thing I think that's been unique about Newtown is in forming that board, she was really intentional to get the leaders from across every industry in Macon that mattered. The utilities, the large companies, the paper publishers, right?
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, I think any community could solve any problem if they get 30 of their top leaders to focus and commit for a generation. That's the hard part.
Of course, it wasn't a problem that was created overnight. It's not a problem that's been fixed overnight.
That's
It's
right.
been a long
It
process
has.
back. All that kind of started, I guess the first high profile thing that I can remember is the Mulgi Heritage Trail and
Yes.
utilizing that beautiful spot down by the river and giving people a reason to come back down to the
Yeah, I
area.
mean, talking about latent resources, you know, the beautiful architecture in downtown's one, the river's an even bigger one. I mean,
Yeah.
we've been inhabited for 17,000 years because of that river. But really, it had become Bill Causey calls it a glorified drainage dish. It mostly served industrial purposes, but people love being by the water.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful river. But yeah, in 1996, when Newtown was started, there weren't any parks or trails for people to go observe the water. You saw it on a bridge in a car, and that was it. So yeah, Chris Sheridan says about the trail that the point of the trail was providing a space where people could get to know each other. When they get to know each other, they get to trust each other. When they trust each other, things happen. It amazes me, even to this day, when I go see other cities, how few of them are looking at developing resources and public spaces that everyone in the community can use. But
Right.
the trail is it.
Yeah, and I guess from that it grew out into more trying to get the downtown area turned around and to get business back in there. And I think one of the key things that Newtown hit on early is that people are not. You mentioned people shop where they live, and so unless you were tackling the housing downtown, the businesses were never going to get traction.
Yes, 100%. Retail follows rooftops. That's the adage, and it's 100% true. It turns out to have been incredibly prescient, especially coming out of COVID, because the downtowns that were focused on office space now are faring worse than Macon. Big downtowns like Seattle and Portland have occupancy sunk into the 60s and 70s,
Yeah.
which is crazy. But yeah, for us, focusing on residential space, turning the beautiful upper floors of the department stores into cool lofts has been the formula that worked. Every 15 lofts we build, that's enough to fuel a new storefront. The
Wow.
people who move into those lofts spend enough money for somebody to start a mom and pop business downstairs. So there's a very direct relationship between building the lofts and filling the storefronts.
And it's it was so amazing to see it take place over time, and you didn't try to find a quick answer. It's not an overnight answer.
No, you're right about that. I mean, I think that's maybe one of the best universal lessons in economic development is there are no silver bullets. Even the state of Georgia, when they were recruiting industry, it's not like they talk somebody into moving to a place and then that solves all the problems. Honestly, what happens is industry moves into places that are getting it right.
Yeah.
Because they want to have successful employees who are happy to live in the places where they function. So yeah, it really is more about the fundamentals of being a well-managed, well-run, smart, and we were talking a little bit before off camera about just efficiency,
Yes.
right? That's really what wins, and those wins just compound. So downtown is unquestionably a big piece of the economic development puzzle. If you can prove that you have a successful downtown, what that proves is everybody in your community works together, and that's the sign of success that gets you every other win in the economic development arena.
Well, we're just getting started. We're talking to Josh Rogers with NewTown Macon about the development of downtown and what we've been through so far, and also what's coming up ahead. And we'll have much more as Central Georgia Focus continues. Welcome back to Central Georgia Focus. Our guest today is NewTown Macon CEO Josh Rogers, and we were talking about the development of downtown and bringing new life and getting people to live there, but the timing couldn't have been any better because I guess about 10 or 15 years ago, there kind of started to be a national movement toward people moving into downtown areas and maybe trying to cut down on commuting so much and improve their lifestyle. And Macon was already had a 15-year head start on everybody else.
Yeah, it really has worked out really fortuitously. You're right. There's just a moment now, especially coming out of COVID, transportation has gotten outrageously expensive. Cars are really, really expensive, and I think people are just reassessing their lifestyle. But honestly, in every community, there's going to be a percentage of people who want to live in a walkable neighborhood. And I think that pendulum just swung a little too far towards car-oriented, where it was the only choice available.
Yeah.
I mean, there are 160,000 people in Macon. About 1,000 of those live in lofts downtown. So you're not talking about, I mean, a huge percentage of people completely changing the way they live, but there's always a portion. And the great thing about having that portion is they can drive the business for the rest of us to come visit downtown whenever we want and have access to the best restaurants in the region, amazing music venues, a great place to get a drink. So it's a really symbiotic relationship, whether you live downtown or whether you visit a couple of times a year for special occasions. It's just one of those critical amenities that every community needs. I think downtown sort of set the ceiling for what's possible in your community. They show the limits of your ambition.
Yes.
And I think raising that bar for Macon has a direct relationship on all our other neighborhoods. I honestly believe that successes like the amphitheater are inherently tied to downtown, because when you can prove you can do what we did downtown,
right,
you do it anywhere. And that really makes a big difference in inspiring hope for citizens.
Yeah, and I guess taking that targeted approach, like you see the Mill Village in East Macon and other projects that are branching out from that.
I think that may be one of the most challenging aspects of any kind of revitalization project is it does require focus. If you take a shotgun approach and spread the resources you've got available into too many disparate places, you don't change the mechanics of that like neighborhood as an economic unit. And so it's really hard because you tell people and they live in a struggling neighborhood and they're like, we need that help too. Well, gosh, I mean, we're never going to get there if we don't focus here and then grow out. But undoubtedly, that's been, so maybe 5 or 6 years ago, people were convinced we'd hit the pivot point, that downtown was going to make a comeback. I remember that because the questions used to be, is this really possible?
Yeah.
Now that doesn't come up anymore. Everybody's convinced. But I think probably within the past 2 years, we hit a point where people see hopefulness in their neighborhood, even if they're not close to downtown. So yeah, but that is one of the most difficult aspects is you have to focus.
The interesting thing with it too is it's something that has been sustained and keeps going. Every study, and this goes back probably 15 years that I've seen about housing in downtown Macon, it always says you need 500 to 800 lofts over the next 5 years, and you can't build them that fast.
That's right.
And that hasn't changed. Even as more lofts have been built, that hasn't changed.
No, it hasn't. I'd say there are pluses and minuses to the approach that we've taken because it's entirely based on local developers and it's almost entirely based on historic buildings. And so you're sort of stuck with some of our buildings only hold 2 lofts. That's just how it is.
Right.
It takes just as long to plan and finance and build 2 lofts as it does 100. I'd say the benefits to that are we're preserving our historic architecture, and the benefits that are coming out of those buildings going up 10 times in value, they're staying with some local Maconite. I mean, some local Maconite is seeing their wealth go from $100,000 to $1 million. So there are a lot of benefits, but the cost of it, I think, is speed. We're not putting up garden apartments 200 at a time to meet that demand, definitely.
And I guess another, at the time it was bad, but a lucky thing about Macon having that slow period is there wasn't stuff getting torn down and built in its place. So a lot of the old stuff, we did lose some historic homes and some historic buildings through the years, but there's so much still there, so much to the point that, like for instance, when 42 shot here, a lot of the neighborhoods were used because it looked like the 1940s or 50s.
We just had, Superman
around
the corner?
Exactly, which kind of has, it has an old Gothic look to it.
No, you're right about that. A lot of downtowns experienced urban renewal, which we did over at the Coliseum area, but thankfully not in the heart of downtown, where entire blocks were demolished for parking lots. And we were so fortunate to miss that wave of bad ideas in urban planning, because now that's what pulls everybody's heartstrings. It's like a little Disney Main Street when you come downtown because of the beautiful buildings. And I don't think it would work without the quality of that architecture.
It definitely, I think, gave you a great foundation and a palette to build on. So and you're also seeing that sustainability though on the commercial side too. Poplar Street has really transformed in the last couple of years with it's almost like an outdoor food court now.
It is. It's so much fun. Yeah, and I mean, the other cool thing about that is just thinking about the individual stories of the people who own those businesses, Lee Clack and Kelly Wrigley and Brian Nichols, but they're all friends and neighbors who've started these businesses who were being really, really successful. And especially something like Kudzu Seafood, they started in like 800 square feet.
Yes.
Now they have this huge, gorgeous restaurant with murals and a rooftop bar. It's really addictive when you get involved with entrepreneurs who have good ideas and are willing to work for it and who are just going to make things really successful. And then the other cool thing about that is the only place you get whatever's on their menu is that one restaurant on the whole earth. And so you got to come downtown to get it.
And you've got the, more and more festivals. We always had, Cherry Blossom's been around since the 80s, long before the revitalization. But with the revitalization, you're starting to see things like the beer festival downtown, and of course the Christmas lights, which are becoming a regional draw now.
Yeah, we had 1 million people come to the Christmas lights last year. It was so much fun. Friends and neighbors from states away come in to see that, and it's a really special thing. Out of Brian's imagination and hard work, and it's been a really great amenity. But I also think, even connecting to Cherry Blossom, it makes Cherry Blossom stronger when downtown's stronger. So not only I think our legacy program's going to continue to grow and enhance, but it creates opportunities for people to start new ones. And I can't wait to see, we've got 2 beer festivals now. There's always something going on in downtown. We've tried to be really intentional with our programming, like French Fry Fight and Spirit Forward, to focus the events we do on helping to generate additional business to sustain the entrepreneurs we've got downtown. That's been a really successful relationship because they come up with great ideas, they're willing to do the extra work, and it creates one more opportunity for people to come downtown and spend some time and money.
And I guess you're always going to have some people that maybe haven't gotten the message, or detractors, or they still think of the old downtown, and you do occasionally have crimes. It's usually pocketed, it's usually late at night, but it's what often gets the headlines. How do you work to overcome that? Because you'll see the comments on social media, oh, I hadn't heard of that place, or oh, I don't go downtown anymore. And it's like, you obviously, people are missing out if they don't try it.
I think events are a great way. Like, those festivals and events attract such unique niches of people, and it's a great opportunity for them to have an invitation and know there are going to be 100 people with a similar interest to come check it out. So, I mean, that'd be the first thing, because honestly, I think if you give us a chance, if you'll come downtown for whatever you're interested in, it's going to steal your heart and you'll be back again and again. We certainly have challenges around, especially nightlife. Nightlife has exploded, which has been a good thing. We've got 38 bars and music venues downtown now.
Wow.
It's nuts that you can walk to.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a really vibrant nightlife experience. And it's an important part of being a successful city is having that nightlife. But on a regular Friday and Saturday, we can have 7,000 or 8,000 people in those bars. I mean, you're talking about something that feels like River Street or Bourbon Street.
Right.
So it's definitely a challenge for us. We've just done a study with the Responsible Hospitality Institute, and we're working to implement all the national best practices for running nightlife districts, because honestly, I'd like it to continue to grow. And it's a big thing for tourists, is to be able to have access to nightlife. Yeah, but people who come in downtown are going to have a safe, enjoyable experience. So just give us a chance, and you'll be convinced. I don't have to say anything else, I don't think.
Well, a lot to come in the future, too, and we'll get into that in a little bit when we return to Central Georgia Focus. Welcome back to Central Georgia Focus. I'm Raymond Tubb, along with NewTown CEO Josh Rogers, and always good to talk to you about all the things coming up downtown. We've talked a lot about the past and what's been going into NewTown over the last few years to continue to see Macon grow. So you've reaped some of the rewards of that too. As we went to break, we saw Mayor Lester Miller holding up an award, and that was no small award that you got there.
That was so much fun. Yeah, the Great American Main Street Award. It's the only award that recognizes a holistic approach to downtown revitalization in the country. So it's really the top award for downtowns. And I don't think it marks a destination. We're not nearly done. We've got a lot more work to do. But if you went back 20 years and said Macon could get an award for downtown, nobody would have bought it at all.
No, you're right.
So I think it's a great recognition that what we're doing are the right things. The other reason I think we won that award, there are a couple, but one of them is what we're doing is replicable. I mean, we didn't land a silver bullet like we were talking about earlier.
Right.
It was really blocking and tackling, really basic stuff. So I think any community could adapt the strategies where they teach entrepreneurs and developers how to start businesses and fix buildings, and then provide the money they need to do those things. That's not rocket science. That's something everybody can do. The other piece I think that really caught national attention was that we have focused so much on providing opportunities for women and people of color to participate. We went from 18 black-owned storefronts 3 years ago to now we have over 50. So we've made some real progress in ensuring that every member of our community gets the opportunity to benefit from what's happening downtown.
Yeah, talk about a little bit about some of the support systems that are there for businesses to help them get started and to help them keep going, because so many businesses fail in their first year or two, and you've done a good job. We have some turnover downtown. You're going to have that. That's part of a business cycle and restaurant cycle, but you all do a lot to help that be the exception rather than the rule.
That's right. My staff and I are available all the time for free to help support people who either are interested in starting something or are already in business downtown. And because we've gotten to do this now with over 100 different businesses, we really are pretty good at providing the advice that people need, and sometimes it's financial resources, but we do that too. So it's a one-stop shop for people to get support for whatever they want to have happen downtown. And that's really borne out by, over the past 5 years, only 11% of our businesses have closed. The national average for small business failure is 50%.
Wow.
So we've been able to cut that down by 4/5 by providing this support. We also do classes so people can come take a Developers Academy, an Entrepreneurs Academy, our Downtown Diversity Initiative, and we just launched a new Marketing Academy with Georgia Power so that people can continue to grow their sales. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it is, Maconites are just as smart as everybody else, right? So it really is just access to the knowledge and the resources for them to be able to compete effectively with anybody else in the whole world. And that's where we found most of our success, is just taking local people with a good idea and then making sure they get supported with access to the resources they need to succeed.
So what does the future hold? What's the next big thing for NewTown Macon?
I mean, there's so much exciting stuff happening downtown. Right now, where the Joseph and Neal's building used to be, there are 95 apartments that local developer Robo Hatcher is putting up, and those are going to we've got about 750 lofts now, so that's a significant increase, adding 100 of those. There are more projects like that will also add parking garages in strategic locations in downtown, so providing easier access for people to get in, find secure parking, and enjoy downtown and leave. And then probably our biggest opportunity is in tourism. As Macon pursues this national park, we could get 10 times more visitors over the next several years.
I don't think people realize how big that Old Mulgee Heritage Park is going to be, but that's definitely
huge.
Yeah.
I mean, game changer, bigger than anything else in our lifetimes that's happened in Macon. So I think preparing ourselves for that opportunity and making downtown more tourist friendly and providing more hotel rooms. Hotel 45 has been a huge success, but we need 10 more of those to keep going.
So some more big changes can be expected on the horizon.
And I think some of the other things we've had with the Macon Action Plan, people want to see more recognizable brands downtown. We're definitely at the point where I think we're ready to grow up. Macon's going to go from strength to strength now, and this award helps too.
Yes.
I mean, everybody's looking at best places to live and all that kind of stuff. Recognition like Great American Main Street gets us on that list for people to be looking at. So the best is definitely yet to come.
Well, we appreciate you joining us. Josh Rogers, CEO of NewTown Macon, and thank you for joining us as well. And be sure to, you can always follow us online and on your Roku or Amazon Fire TV. You can always find us on 13WMAZ.com.